She muted. And you got an echo on your end too, Mike. You got to probably turn down the local volume there. So we're back here live for a special guest today. I wanted to bring in Mr. Michael Fraser, or Mike Fraser, how you prefer to be called here. But again, we're women in Linux, and we're gonna get into it because I know you got limited time. I know last time we spoke, I saw you had 30 minutes. So I don't know if it's 30 minutes or it's an hour.
We can, whatever, man. Wherever this leads into, but I can do up to an hour. No problem.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's give you a round of applause for your accomplishment here. You recently sold what your first company was Refractor, right?
I said Refactor. Refactor. Yeah.
Okay, I know it's the R at the end. I was like, is it Refactor or Refactor? Yeah. All right, and you recently just sold to Sophos, correct? Is that the right name?
Right. Correct. Yep. Right? We were. Yep. It was Sophos, acquired back in August of this year.
In August. So one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on today was talking about really from ideation to being sold and actually scaling in between that, because I know you had to hire some people and so forth and so on. So let's talk about really getting started. Where did the idea come from?
Yeah, so as you know, and I guess for the audience, I'm ex-Air Force, so I started my career in cybersecurity as a cybersecurity practitioner, and then came over to the developer world. Was very interested in getting into DevOps and DevSecOps, and was doing work for customers, consulting and advising, and really wanted to figure out how to bridge the gap between cybersecurity and DevOps, and really honing in on the different tools and technology that both types of users use on a day-to-day basis, and build something that could be collaborative. So the idea came about as being somebody in industry. I really focused, though, on over the last 10 years on this idea of trying to centralize automation. I did a bunch of work in the virtual desktop space, worked in the public cloud and cybersecurity. And so it all kind of came together about 4 years ago. But I was still kind of focused on figuring out what we were trying to build. So we went through a major pivot, actually, or actually a couple, where we started out with a cloud security architect platform, which was our first version of the product. We launched it, got a few customers on it, and then realized that we needed to go for something bigger. We were also targeting MSPs and MSSPs at the time, and they were absolutely not ready. We were still focused on that part of the industry, and I ended up pitching at a industry event, ConnectWise, IT Nation, at a pitch event called Pitch It, and we won $100,000. We continue to focus on MSPs and
ConnectWise was that was local here in Tampa, or that was somewhere else?
No, it was in Tampa, but okay. we were in Orlando when we won the pitch competition. But yes, ConnectWise out of Tampa, correct?
Okay.
And then we last year decided to pivot once we received the Air Force contract. The Air Force has a division called AppWorks that has a program called SIBRs, which are Small Business Innovation and Research, to help small businesses solve problems through different things, essentially through R&D. And so we ended up getting a SIBR contract with Platform One, which is the DevSecOps initiative that it's very near and dear to you. And we also decided to pivot from MSPs to enterprise, and working towards also targeting large system integrators and cybersecurity vendors. So actually, let me go back. In 2018, we won the pitch competition. We were still focused on MSPs. In 2019, we went back to the drawing board and completely built what's the current refactor platform from scratch. Anthony and I, my other co-founder, and Kareen helped too, who's my third co-founder and wife, which was an awesome and an interesting experience altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And we built that out and then launched that at the beginning of 2020. And that was in lieu of the Air Force contract that we had won the phase 1, and then you get to phase 2 to actually do the R&D work, which we won the phase 2 in December of last year and started on that at the beginning of this year. And then, long story short, Sophos was interested, and we ended up getting acquired in August. It took a little bit to get over the finish line, but now I'm VP of DevSecOps at Sophos.
Right. So let's back up. Was this the 2019 was when you and I talked, or was that 2018? I really don't remember. I think it was 2019.
We talked in 2019. I met you in 2019 when I was pitching at
Okay.
DevOps, or not pitching. I guess I'm always pitching, but when I presented at
DevOps
DevOps
days.
Yep.
Yeah, DevOps days. It was DevOps days in Tampa.
Yep, and Nielsen. Yeah.
At exactly. Nielsen. Yep. And so, D, if you could share my screen, let's give because there are some acronyms and some things you stated that people may not know. So, okay, here's the website for Sophos, where you are now VP of DevSecOps. Correct.
Correct. Yep.
All right. Correct. And you mentioned AFWorks. So for people that don't know, AFWorks, here's the website here, where pretty much is more about pitching ideas or responding to ideas over at AFWorks. And for you, it was a SBIR, correct? SBIR.
Correct. Yep. SBIR.
Yep. And when you mentioned Platform 1, for those that know anything you've seen in our Slack channel, oftentimes Platform 1 is mentioned, but if you follow them on LinkedIn, and any time I've mentioned this before, there's Platform 1, there's Cloud 1, and then there's a whole bunch of other, I guess you can say, work. I won't say SBIRs, I'll just say work that falls under this particular contract or this particular platform, I should say. And that can go from, as you can see here, that can go from multiple entities to down to these different software factories, and you see level up here, and then also different tools. And a lot of this is centered around OpenShift, Kubernetes, DevSecOps, cloud security, containers, OCI. What else am I leaving out, Mike?
I mean, there's a lot more, but that pretty much from a high level.
At a high level, that's it. But check out this website. I'll give this to D for you to check out. All right. So now, going in reverse, you have to build a team. Now, in order to build a team, what were some of the prereqs that you were looking for in order to build that team?
Yeah, so for me, the most important is the founding team. Some people try to create a startup from scratch. As solo founders, I've always I've had multiple different companies. So I've had companies where I was the solo person, but most of the companies I've had other co-founders, and also finding co-founders that complement your skill set, that you can trust and lean on. When you're building something out, try to build out your product first. We did it very non-traditional, where we built it. Most companies, especially in software, especially if you're trying to build a platform, will try to go out and raise money first to go do that. We didn't do that, so we're part of the crazy bunch that bootstrapped from basically our own dollars. We sold our house, and put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into making this happen. And we didn't really start ramping up on hiring until 2020. So it was really looking at trying to find the people that are willing to become a part of a startup. Not everybody's cut out to work at a startup either. So if you like processes and everything structured for you, startup, especially small startups, may not be the best place for you, but it does keep you on your toes, and you have to wear a lot of different hats. So when I look at different types of talent, referrals was super important. We went through and used a few services as well out there to see if we can find talent, but a lot of them, are okay with screening the technical side, but not as good on the soft skill side. So you just really have to, a lot of times, go with your gut when it comes to hiring on your first handful of people. I don't think we got any higher than like 12 or 13 employees max at the company. So we were still relatively small. But my goal hiring certain people as well is to help augment and offload things from us as founders, to try to make it easier for us to not have to spend time on things that we shouldn't be focused on, and trying to figure out ways to help also push forward on sales and marketing, which is and engineering. Those are the two main categories that we hired into. And it's tough because everybody has to, you want people to come in under a certain job description that you have. And a lot of times it'll end up, you can ask anybody that came over to Sophos, that was on the refactor team, that it was that they wore a lot of different hats when they were doing things. Right. Constantly context switching between, we need to make this happen for a customer. We need to get this release out the door. So it was super interesting and very, very fast paced. The velocity was just insane.
Right. So now the question becomes on the soft skills, for someone who's maybe looking to go into a startup, because there's two questions here. One was someone who's wanting to go into a startup, and then the other one is someone who is hiring people for a startup. What soft skills did you look at in order to bring someone aboard? I'm assuming communication, but I'm sure there are other things that you looked at.
Communication for sure. The other key soft skills are going to be, even if you don't have the skills out of the gate, show that you have the aptitude to pick up the skills. A lot of startups are working on stuff very bleeding edge, like we were and still are, although we're no longer a startup. And so you need people to be able to have aptitude to pick up net new everything, and also be able to be team players. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but we want people working together, and people enjoy working together. I think everybody at Refactor enjoyed working with each other, knowing that if we had to go work a late night, or if you had to work in the weekend, we tried not to, but certain times where it's just we have to get it done. Everybody was all in to try to accomplish the mission of whatever it was, whether we're trying to get a customer on board or trying to get a proposal in for the Air Force contract, whatever it may be, being able to work on those things. And then I would also say, aside from aptitude and being a team player, also being able to be self-motivated. So, if you don't hear from somebody, or you're talking to people online, but you just go and do your own thing to get stuff accomplished, just taking initiative is a very, very big piece as well. If again, it goes into team work as well, but self-motivated initiative goes a long way as well. When everybody's trying to get everything done as a collective, but you have to get your own stuff done too, as an individual as well.
Right. Now, when it comes down to, and you don't have to answer this if you can't. So I'm thinking more on the legal side of having a startup, talking to a lawyer. What are some of the things that you had to put in place? You don't have to share everything, but just an idea around what things you have to put in place, the structure, the accounting, and I'm sure ADP could take care of that, but just a general idea for someone who may want to go out there on their own, but hey, here's some things that you probably need to think about.
Yes, and there are a lot of things to think about. Um, I learned a lot of it trial and error, or you run into something, and then you find out, oh, okay, I need to make sure that I have this in place. And there's obviously legal. There's a lot of things, and I could spend a whole hour just on what you need to have in place and the do's and don'ts as a
Right.
founder starting your own startup, especially a tech startup. And there's a lot of things around that, from your business formation to particular things that you need to get in place with the IRS to the types of accounting systems that you need to have in place as well. There's a lot of also things to think about around your agreements, things like EULAs, TO. It depends on what you're doing too, right? So if you're going to do SaaS-based offering or PaaS like we were doing, platform as a service, you want to have really solid EULA privacy policies. There's also security practices that you need to have in place too, or cybersecurity practices that you have to be thinking about. And even as a small company, we were building a cybersecurity program. Didn't get as far as with it I want to, but we had a lot in place that we had to make sure that we could support for various customers that we were bringing on and their requirements around compliance and things that they wanted us to have in place as a startup. So there's just a lot of stuff that you have to think about when it comes to the company formation, how you're running it from a day to day. You also brought up like payroll and other things to HR. The nice thing is we had Kareen, my wife, and the other co-founder running HR, but we were outsourcing it to a PEO, which is I forget what the acronym stands for, but basically it's a shared employer, so they become the employer of the company. So just looking at things like that out there to see if that makes sense for you. I won't say that I had the greatest experience with some of those, but it's either do it yourself or hope that they're going to give you enough support to make it worthwhile. But I will not name those companies.
I got it. Now, with you got your team, you got your back office, you're setting it up, you have your idea. I'm assuming you're probably putting your ideas into a Jira board or some Kanban boards for the task to be accomplished. All right, now you got the idea, you have things moving. Now you need to market this idea, or did you market before you started pulling?
So we did, yeah. So we did originally, and I try to lay groundwork, but it's always difficult to market something before something exists. I mean, you can do it, but then you're creating constraints around yourself on timelines to deliver. And usually, the first version of the product you hope is polished enough to be good enough for folks out there as an MVP, minimum viable product. But it's one of those things where you want to have your MVP at least in place so that you can start your marketing activities. My marketing strategy was pretty much guerrilla marketing. Myself out there going out and speaking at events and going to shows before the pandemic, and then also getting articles written, published out there, and then I just knew a lot of people from industry. So I would say that leveraging your network is super important to close your first handful of customers, and then from there you really have to get a process in place to ensure that you can properly collect leads, start doing some targeting out there from from an SEO standpoint, from where are you trying to show up on Google searches and other things. So just thinking about a lot of the tactics around that type of marketing. We did end up having a marketing director for a time too, which was super awesome. She was great. And I think, you want to start having somebody dedicated to marketing, but it's always a chicken and an egg issue with, you want to spend the money on the marketing, but you don't have the money to spend on the marketing. So you're trying to figure out, when the best time is to make that happen.
Right. Now, speaking on the marketing side, it's not just, you're not just talking about marketing across like social media and so forth, but maybe, I know speaking at conferences is another thing, but where else would where else did you market to? Like, what other platforms were you on?
That's a good question too. We did a lot of referral marketing. Again, back to my network. So um, targeting, customers that or prospects to turn them into customers of folks that I knew in industry that believed in what we're doing. So I would say find champions and organizations that you have connections in. That's going to be much more. Uh, you get a much better ROI from that than you are from trying to just throw money out there and hoping that it's going to stick. We didn't do any targeted ads or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
We did do some. We did it. I did a bunch of social media too, as you're mentioning. I would say, don't underestimate though what people are looking at on social media. LinkedIn, keeping people up to speed and giving them tidbits information on what's going on is super critical for a startup. Just so people know that you're out there and targeting that. And then as for anything else, I just go back to doing free type advertising. It's not advertising, free type thought leadership. That's non-advertising around,
Mm-hmm.
again, writing articles, presenting at certain events, also trying to strike partnerships with key vendors that you're working with that could really help accelerate both of your
Yep.
initiatives with customers. So those type of things. I think longer term, we would have engaged with more pay-to-play type um, um, advertising, but it would have been still very targeted. I like the thought leadership path because it gives people information that they're looking for. It's not just a hardcore sale pitch, which nobody really likes.
Right. And I think you have a question here. And the question is, speaking as a neophyte to this space, would you mind elaborating on the automation platform SOAR and its capabilities? Referencing the Oxford Magazine article, August 2021.
I don't know if I've read the Oxford magazine, but there are like 150 articles. But yeah, I can shed some light on it. So it's a DevSecOps platform that essentially is a automation platform that you can use for various cybersecurity use cases. So the SOAR is essentially one use case in there. So you can, as I mentioned earlier, you can take existing tools that we support in the platform, anything from like cloud native templates like CloudFormation, using like Terraform also for infrastructure as code. We had other tools like Ansible in there, security tools around a bunch of cloud native stuff, and also for different scanning like SonarQube and so on. And then you can package those up into we call pipelines, and then those can become building blocks to build a full-on solution that you can automate. So you can build a pipeline for an integration, you can build a pipeline to do some automation. It's really about being able to be proactive and reactive. So SOAR is more reactive. On the developer side, you're usually building stuff in CI/CD, and so we were a hybrid between what SOAR was the security world. We brought the user experience aspects, and then also the CI/CD type architecture from the developer side to really make it a cohesive collaborative experience between cybersecurity and DevOps teams. And then in the user experience, we built in, we have a visual drag and drop builder that you can build all of this in. And then it's super easy and interoperable with other systems too. So one of our value props was, or it is, I should say, is to be able to tie into a customer's existing investments that they have, whether it's an existing CI/CD product like GitHub or GitLab, or it's a cloud management platform or ticketing system or cloud provider. We can tie into anything out there, and you can build these building blocks of automation that you can then share and publish out as well, so other folks across your org can use it as well. So it's a really modern way to automate that brings in other folks on the cybersecurity and ops side to now have a seat at the table, which was traditionally only geared towards developers and DevOps engineers.
Right. Now, quick question. I don't know if you have like a 30-second snippet of the building block or being able to move anything around or what have you, because I don't think they've seen your platform as and give context as to what you're talking about from that.
Yeah, I can. Give me 1 second. I can.
All right. Now, while you're doing that, I'll go a little bit more into it. Okay, so let me give y'all my take on where we're at with DevSecOps. Um, I don't want to say it's new, but it's new. It's right. If you come from a Linux background, or even if you have a security background with some technical background with that in Linux, I think you've been doing DevSecOps already. What has transitioned is now you've added in the ability to use runners from GitLab, or jobs from or stages, however you want to look at it, from GitHub Actions and Travis CI and all the names, right? And you're now able to build out pipelines where now, instead of having human intervention, you now have automation going out and doing the deployment of your infrastructure, doing a security scan of your infrastructure if you needed to, of your containers. Also, finding those actual highs and criticals, and even doing remediation if you wanted to. If you want to go one step further, you also have now unit testing inside of all that. So when we're talking about pipelines, we're talking about really end to end security testing, building. What am I leaving out? Security testing, building. What else am I leaving out, Mike?
Security build test and then release.
Yes.
I would also say the other thing, I sent you the link, so if you want to share that link, that's a
Yep. Yep. I
little
got the
over
link right
2 minute
here.
overview. So I look at DevSecOps as being holistic automation with security built in. So
Yep.
taking what DevOps has been for the last 10 plus years and adding the security piece to it as well. I also look at DevSecOps is really a set of principles. It's not a single product or any sort of thing, but automation, to your point, is very critical. Is a critical part and a very big part of DevSecOps. And I think, from my perspective, it's one of those areas that has really kind of been left out from a cybersecurity practitioner's view when it comes to DevOps specifically. And so DevSecOps is really a new modern take on being able to use DevOps principles with security built in, and really being able to get people to a place that's what I also like to call IT as code. So if it becomes code, it's not just about app development anymore. It's about being able to get whatever it is code based into to your other point, a pipeline process that has multiple steps in it, and you can get the end result. And then it also can be continuous too. So you should be able to add or subtract to it as needed, whether you're going to incorporate a different tool or you want to be able to do, make another integration, whatever it may be, but make it super flexible, just like we do in software engineering. When you're building software and you're building out functions, you should look at, when you're building pipelines, the steps to be similar in that type of approach. So you end up having, black boxes that people can pick up and use. They can get the end result of what they're expecting out of it. Could be some infrastructure created, could be scanning, could be remediating, but they know what the end result is that they're going to get out of that.
Oh yeah, my screen is flashing. That's me. Sorry. Trying to get my screen set up. All right. So now I have on screen here the Sophos actual I guess I don't want to say tour, but your quick 2 minute splash. But here we go. So this is where your logo for Refactor.
Yep.
And I have the sound down, so I was just trying to get to the drop and drag of this. Let me scroll right here. So this is what we were talking about before here, where you're able to drop and drag and build out your pipelines in order to whatever you want to do, whether it's application testing, as you can see here with AppSec right here, or if you wanted to integrate back with Slack, or you need to do cloud security, and I'm assuming Trivy, you're using Trivy to scan the file systems, and you can also use that for scanning containers. But you can see here is really a drop and drag, which gives and this is often a number one problem is a lot of people don't know how to use all of these tools, and then they also don't understand how the tools connect. So this gives a visualization of how those tools can connect with each other for someone who's maybe a
Yeah,
novice.
and actually does the stuff too. So it's like
Right.
having lucid charts, but actually being able to get the end result of what you've built out the diagram and lucid charts. And the other thing I'll
Mhm.
say, you brought up like GitHub Actions or various other CI/CD platforms, is that they they have the YAML definition that you can build out your pipelines, but it doesn't give anybody that's looking at it a visual way to understand what's actually going on. So it's really a nice way. So we have a YAML definition that is actually what the drag and drop builder is actually building, and so you can actually go in and edit from the YAML too. So when I say bridging the gap, I'm also talking about making sure that both cybersecurity and ops folks and developers and DevOps engineers can both use it at whatever level they want to, and that's super critical when you're building a product. Is if you're especially going to build it across cross collaboration between teams,
Mhm.
you want to be able to ensure that you have functionality and features in there that somebody's going to pick them and go, oh, this is great. This solves the problem I'm looking for, and vice versa
Right.
when it comes to different teams using it.
Right now, I don't know if you all built in. I'm assuming you did. You built into Visual Studio Code as well, too, right?
No, we don't have a plugin to VS Code
Okay.
yet, but we may in the future. One of the things that we decided very early on was that you didn't have to use Git to start using our platform. We didn't want to make that a hard requirement, but you can use Git in your pipeline. So if you want to just get started and copy paste a Terraform configuration in line, you can do that, run it, get the end result, and then when you're ready to actually go to production, you can move your stuff over to any Git provider and then use the Git clone module in order to have more of a Git style workflow. So it's really about making it as easy as possible to get started with it. But yeah, longer term, we'll have there may be things we'll do to help from an integration standpoint. But no, we don't currently have a VS Code
Gotcha.
plugin yet.
Gotcha. Now, when you decided that, hey, or when I should say not you, because I'm excluding your wife and your co-founder, when you all decided that you wanted to not necessarily go to market, but you wanted to be acquired, what was that like for you? Because I know this has been your baby for a while.
That is a good question. So we weren't really looking to be acquired.
Right.
We were relatively early still, so we wanted to continue on down the path of actually raising our first round, which we're actually in the process of. So we were doing that in combination with acquisition talks. And long story short, I mean, there were a lot of things that were kind of hard requirements of mine that I wanted to see in there. Some that I can't really get into, but the overall, my overall request is I didn't want to see the vision of what I wanted Refactor to be longer term, not be able to be realized, and so that was super important for me from a perspective of what that looks like. I also want to make sure that if I'm going to work somewhere, I want to work with the people there, and I like the C levels and so on. So it was a lot of getting to know everybody. I have known the our CTO Joe Levy for a while now, so
Mhm.
there was that connection there too. But from a standpoint of you never want to see your baby grow up, and I equate that to having a daughter too, right? Like she's 7 years old now, so it's tough seeing stuff grow up or things mature or move on. And so, or I say things, like not a thing, a child.
I get what you're saying.
But the same thing, with your company, you kind of treat the same way, and you do when you get acquired, you do relinquish some control. But I think the right place for the right acquisition. And the other side of that, a lot of customers and folks look at, and I've seen it happen a lot where, a company gets acquired and they get tucked in, and then people hate the company for not just getting acquired, but what happens to the product and the team after the fact. And so we want to be very, very careful about that too, because, there's still a big problem that we're solving, and there's still a huge opportunity here. And to your point, DevSecOps, or your point earlier, DevSecOps isn't necessarily new, but I still think it's very immature at its growth stage. And so there's a lot of opportunity for different products to help solve things for customer problems. And we think we sell a lot. We have a lot of potential here and a lot that we're working on currently. So overall, it's I guess when you're not looking for something, it
falls in your lap.
It falls in your lap. So
so what out of this, from idea to being sold now, what would you say are your learning lessons?
Well, the first one is, if you know everything that it's going to take to go through the whole process, you may never do it. So, so I would always wager to say that, if you're going to go for it, realize it's always going to be harder than you think it's going to be. It's always going to take longer than you think it's going to take. And it's always going to require more resources than you think that you can obtain things. But every time you keep pushing on the impossible, you make it possible. And so I would say that, the right product at the right time is super critical when you're bringing something net new to market. And then also the team is super paramount to your overall success. And, I could not have done it solo myself. I needed everybody, our co-founders and the team that we built in order to make this happen. And then I also think that from a perspective, so another fun fact with Refactor is I got my bachelor's and my master's using my GI Bill that I was receiving, BAH, basic allowance for housing, that you get paid out of it to pay bills as we were going along, and then sold our house too. So you will start doing things creatively that you never thought were possible. And so you need to look at, different angles and ways to make it work. And you just have to be a very, very, very creative person in order to pull it off. But with the success that you may see now, there was a lot of failures that predated everything. So I like talking to other founders, because the illusion is, oh, look, you had a great exit, cool, but you don't realize the whole backstory or what has all gone into it. And so, like, people like to say, this was a 10-year overnight success, right? And so it's one of those things where it takes years and years and years, and just a lot of perseverance and stubbornness, really, to just keep going. And sometimes you have to cut your losses too. So there's a lot of times where you'll be at a place where you're just like, well, maybe, does this make sense anymore? Should we continue doing this? And you come to crossroads consistently as a founder, where you have to decide and make decisions to say, you know what, do we keep on going, or do we call it a day? And the only person at the end of the day that's really going to lose if you continue on is you. So then you have to look at how much do you believe in yourself or not. So I don't say be naive to keep going at no matter the cost, but if you really believe in something and you've taken it from an idea to an actual product, you get people to start paying you for it. Then you're really onto something. And getting somebody to pay for your product, the first handful of customers, is the hardest, because nobody wants to take a chance on something that's net new. And so you have to find ways to, I should say nobody, very few people want to take a chance on net new, but you will find that smaller group of early adopters that are willing to take the risk. And if you really build something great that they like using, then it will continue to grow out of what you've created.
Now, you're VP with DevSecOps, and you've been co-founder, CEO. I don't know what you CEO slash. I don't know what you were beforehand.
I was co-founder, CEO, and chief architect, but basically
Okay,
just
chief architect. Okay,
the vision of what we were trying to build.
right. Now going forward, I know you all have positions open at Sophos, but are you hiring under your umbrella of Sophos?
Yes, we're definitely hiring. We have a careers page out there, so go check it out. There's all kinds of different positions that are open and available. We're still relatively new at Sophos, so we're pick and choose depending on our allocation. But the rest of Sophos is hiring too. So I would say that there's a lot of opportunity here if you're interested.
So you did have a question. How was your support model grown along with your customer base?
That's a good question. So everybody provided support, I guess is a good way to say it. On the engineering side, everybody picked up where we needed to respond, or over time we put in SLAs. We were able to build in support by we did things like we would do a dedicated Slack channel to make it super easy to access us, those type of things.
Mm-hmm.
So we got creative on how we could work with customers to make it super easy for them from a support standpoint. But then we'd have everybody from the engineering team in, so they'd be answering questions as well. So I think that was a good way for us at a small as a small startup. From a scaling perspective, we were getting systems in place too to help with that. So we had Jira Service Desk, and we were building out processes around that as well. So we really wanted to make sure that we could scale up the type of support we were providing to customers. I would say the nice thing about our initial customers, though, is most of them were, once we got them ramped up, they were pretty self-sufficient. So we didn't really get that much support requests there. We'd get questions here and there, but there wasn't really a whole lot from it wasn't like an every day of customers pinging us on constantly on support. It was more just like asking questions around different things that they're trying to accomplish in the platform. If they had questions around something, and they'd just go back off again and continue on and build what they were trying to build.
Right. So another question I had, and there's two more questions. Well, one more question up here, but when it came down to, and I often see this is often taken off, having a product manager. I'm assuming you and the CTO and your wife were primarily the product managers, but if you were bringing someone else in, and if you brought someone else in, how did you go about training that person? Did that person had to just get on board and start learning the product and learning who your customer base was? Or did you like, okay, look, this is what we're doing. Here's our slides, here's our video, here's all what we have, put something together and go out there and pitch this product?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we didn't really relinquish it was really primarily Anthony, my other co-founder, and I didn't really relinquish the product manager hat. We were very much in sync with both being product managers. I'd say it would be pretty hard to pull in a product manager at our size and where we were. It's always the conundrum with trying to bring somebody net new in and ramp them up. Nobody knows as much as you do as founders about something that you built from scratch. So I would say that probably is one of the biggest problems that organizations have, is trying to pull in a product manager that can closely align with your vision. Now, there's a difference between a traditional product manager who's more about building requirements and trying to get everything put together on what's next for the product. That's one thing of it. Then the other side is product management, right? And so, or project management, I should say. And project management is something that we could have absolutely used to help us out just logistically.
Right.
But we ended up just figuring out how to manage ourselves. And then we eventually hired on some folks that we had one of our engineers who was basically like our Scrum master. So he would keep us in line. So he did a lot of the project management kind of, not really project management, because I guess that's kind of anti-agile,
Scrum Master.
but being able to manage our Jira board and make sure that we're all in alignment with what's coming up next. And then I would say, from a product manager, wearing my product manager hat, I would say that one of the other key pieces that I would look for somebody to hire there is the ability to translate what the customer's requirements are to engineering. And that's actually a pretty difficult job to get right. So again, which is why we didn't relinquish that, because I interfaced with pretty much all customers and would receive all the different feedback and then I bring in Anthony when necessary, but try to figure out what made sense for them and then what we would prioritize too, because you don't want to be in the inverse of that where you're trying to do all things for all customers too. You really have to stack rank, and then you just have to start making decisions on what's going to be of the best benefit for the broader set of your customers, and hope that you're making the best decisions there.
All right. Now the question you do have is, what is the time horizon have you projected for AI technology to essentially take the wheel from those holding roles in dev and DevSecOps? Elon, the company have been busy. I'll take a stab at that.
Sure,
I
and
don't.
I could
Yeah,
take
I
a
don't.
stab.
I don't think there's going to be a takeover. I think it'll be a complement. Um, that's my thoughts. But in terms of when I say a compliment, um, I'll give you. I talked about this before. There's no reason why HashiCorp couldn't take all the integration that they have with Vault and Terraform with Terraform Cloud or Vault Cloud or Console Cloud and look at deployments and say, hey, if you are a medium to small size or small to medium company and you're going to scale, here are some ideas around how you would want to set up your Vault cluster. Here's some ideas of how to set up your Terraform cluster. Here's some nuances that you may run to and make suggestions too, right? But I don't see someone downloading Terraform as an enterprise model, or even using Terraform Cloud, and then saying, "Hey, I want to deploy an AKS cluster," and then it fills out everything for you automatically, and then you just click next, and maybe you enter a couple of fields and go do the deployment. Maybe I don't see a full takeover. I see it more of a suggestion. That's my take on that.
Yeah, and I mean, for the time being, I think we would be beyond DevOps and DevSecOps at the point that AI were to take over. I also like when people talk about AI ML type approach to things, I think the thought process around it is that it's it's like a robot that's going to take over humans' jobs, and that's not really what the existing AI ML technologies out there today. They're out there to comb through just huge data sets and be able to create models and algorithms to better assess what you can do with your data, exactly what you're talking about, whether it's making suggestions or being able to look at and assess all these different manual tasks and then figure out ways to, suggest or even possibly build some automation around them from scratch. But it's all fairly rudimentary still. And so I would think about it from a standpoint of, what does a DevOps or DevSecOps engineer do? And because of the multi-domains that are required for those particular jobs and the type of complexity, or I should say the complexity of what's required, I don't see that happening from the near term. Longer term, it may be more and more helping to augment, to help there, but that also goes to automation, right, too? Because, automation is super rudimentary, or it can be super rudimentary, taking manual tasks and automating them, but then thinking about adding an AI component would just enhance the automation that you can do versus replacing the human completely. Now, does that mean it might not happen, 20, 30, 40, 50 years in the future? Sure. But by then I won't be in this industry anymore. I'll be nicely retired and maybe working on things, but I'm pretty sure DevOps and DevSecOps won't be forefront in everybody's mind. There'll be some other acronym out there.
Right. You got another question, and is do you get questions from customers as it relates to governance or compliance, or are these the types of things that their internal teams are usually able to handle?
That's a good question. Yeah, so all the time, as everything evolves out there, so one of our customers that we had prior to acquisition was Center for Net Security. We did a bunch of stuff around their CIS benchmarks and building some automation around remediation for the benchmarks, and folks are looking at, or customers are looking at trying to get a handle on how to automate more from a compliance standpoint, and then from governance and policy and that type of stuff. There's a lot more push towards leveraging tools in order to provide some level of governance. That the end result is to try to map those findings to cybersecurity frameworks that they're trying to accomplish. So a lot of organizations outsource that because it's just a lot for them to handle. And so I would say, like, from a longer term strategy, we'll see more and more automation added in. So when I say, like, IT is code, when I say that, policy is code, security is code, which comes under compliance, all those things lump into the bucket of IT as code. And so I think more customers are looking to want to leverage technology to help them out when it comes to this type of stuff. But there's always going to be a human component to it, because, if I can go in and you can automate a SOC 2 type 2 from the technical side, there's always going to be that percentage of policy that you need to have in place for your program. And, what are you doing around all of the logistical and people parts of what are required there? So there's always going to be that component. But I do believe longer term that automation and specifically DevSecOps can help substantially in this area, and is absolutely something that pops up all the time from customers asking.
So that's when you start getting into Cloud Mapper, Cloud Custodian, Cloud Tamer.io. Even Aqua Security has one. If you look at the cloud security under AWS or Azure or GCP, if you look under their hubs, or however you want to look at their security, their cloud security, there's always, do you want to meet this standard of SOC 2 or PCI DSS, or you need to meet these NIST standards, or you want to meet NSA standards or whatnot. But for us on the DevSecOps side, it's a playbook for us. It's a playbook. Mind group comes to mind automatically, or you're creating your own. You can roll that into Ansible. You can also do your testing with TerraTest. If you're doing Terraform, then you can start getting into not just the security of the infrastructure, but the security of the Kubernetes cluster.
There's all kinds of stuff you can yeah, you can use OPA, Open Policy Agent for
Yep.
policy. On top of that, some of the tools use things like OPA too, or Rego, which is language that you write in OPA. And there's, Bridge Crews Checkoff, which is now Palo Alto Networks. There's Curix, which is now Tenable. So there's a lot of net new up and coming tools that are built around more of the infrastructure as code stuff, and then there's other tools to your point, or content created. So like MindPoint Group has Enterprise Lockdown. There's a Lockdown Enterprise. Anyway, it's to remediate on the CIS benchmarks and STIG benchmarks and so on. So you can start chaining together these things too. So you want to, again, kind of look at the different tools you're using and the content that those tools can use, because a lot of times they may be two separate pieces, right? So a good example is like using Ansible with the remediation content for CIS benchmarks, but you may be using CIS bench that Aqua Security has, or you could use the Syscat Assessor by CIS. I mean, so again, you can pick and choose what makes the most sense for you, but you're going to always be picking different tools for different steps in your pipeline process that will get you the end results you're looking for. And that's the key, is start thinking that way.
Yep. Another question was for Cisco 5 is, hi Mike, is your customer base primarily utilizing this platform offering on-prem and self-managing, or as a SaaS where the data lives in xCloud?
That's a great question. So if you've read any of the press releases out there, so this isn't me putting any information out there on the Air Force work we did, we started off as a SaaS-based offering, but we have a on-premise offering from the work that we've done with the Air Force. So primarily SaaS, or we like to call it PaaS, because there is a infrastructure as code component to the runner backend where the pipelines execute, but that whole platform will be deployable in Kubernetes anywhere. So we're starting out with some of the main cloud providers like AWS, but longer term, you'll be able to deploy that anywhere. So that's the longer term goal. And then we're hoping that it balances between, or not hoping, it'll balance between on-premise and self-managed. Really, the difference is going to be, do I want to manage all the infrastructure myself? What kind of compliance requirements we have? So obviously, like the DoD has different requirements than, a finance company, which may have their own set of requirements, right? But thinking about the different requirements that you may have, so that you can pick and choose what makes the most sense for you to use, and also what you want to manage.
Yep. Your other question was, how valuable would you say Scrum methodologies to your success in moving the ball in your organization?
It matters more when you have larger teams. I would say, like, a lot of times trying to put structures in place like Scrum can backfire on you if you try to do it too early. So it's always a matter of figuring out where to incorporate this type of stuff, and when you're ramping up and adding on additional engineering talent. So it just really depends on where you incorporate that. But from a longer term strategy, I think it makes a lot of sense to incorporate things like Scrum into the process, because it also helps you, know where you're at on a daily basis, and also, doing retrospectives and knowing what you didn't do at the end of your 2, 3, 4 week or whatever your increment sprints are as well. So, but you really got to have a team in place to fully maximize what that means. And so I don't look at a couple of people initially starting out doing Scrum probably isn't a requirement for your success.
Yeah, I could say from a startup perspective. With a team, you may have 3 infrastructure engineers and maybe 2 security engineers. They don't care, because being agile is not what the customer cares about. It's all about what that customer needs and pushing to give that customer exactly what they need and creating that platform. whatever that product is. So what I've seen is uh, the in terms of Scrum being something that they care about. Initially, no. As the team grows and as the company grows, it becomes important because now you need to account for your time and you need to account for what people are doing and you need to account for how long we're spending on something, and maybe we need to have some education on something, and also maybe we need to lighten the load because maybe we're being too ambitious and say, hey, we're not actually able to get this out in Q4. We actually need to push this to next year, and being realistic with yourself. That's from my experience when it comes to Scrum. I think we got another question down here. Okay, cool. No questions. So, Mike, we're at the top of the hour. I know it didn't seem like it went fast, but it did. And I know I don't want to hold you up, but I if you got more time to go, cool. If not, I understand. But I want to say I'm gonna leave it over to you. What you're thinking? No, yay.
I can wrap it up today.
Okay.
So do have to run a couple minutes, but I can definitely come back on too if you want more targeted information on any particular areas that we talked about today. I'll just say that words of advice coming out of this is I would look at if you're interested in starting your own company, definitely entertain it, but I don't recommend it for everybody. So you better be willing to sacrifice it all. And if you're not, then maybe it's not for you, or you should just go join another startup first to get a taste of it before you decide to embark out on your own. Because it's not for everybody, and I would always think about that before you get out there, and then also build a support structure for yourself too, which is super important. So I've had a lot of great advisors over the years. Trying to find other people out there that can help you, that know more than you, or have been been through the paddle that you may not have been through, or just know more about certain areas that help augment what you're trying to accomplish out there. So just definitely look for folks that can help you and guide you, and almost be mentors to you, but also don't take everybody's advice either. So at the end of the day, you have to make your own decisions. So it's always good to hear what other people have to say, but at the end of the day, it's on you to make decisions if you start a company. So.
Right. And I want to thank you, Mike. I know we've been out of touch over the, I guess, past year. I see you online. I try to share your stuff or like it, at least, put my eyes on what you're doing and so forth. And congratulations on your success. Your title has changed. You're no longer CEO. You're now VP. but it's all good, and I appreciate you. Tell your wife and your co-founder I said hi, and everyone says thank you in the comments as well too.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Tamika. And yeah, don't be a stranger, and appreciate you having me on. And thanks for everybody for attending today. And if you have any questions after this, you can always look me up on LinkedIn. I may not always respond, so if I don't, just be persistent. I think that's what you did, right, Tamika?
Yep.
So,
Yep. Yeah,
so I will eventually respond if you ping me. Just tell me you're from this group, and I'll prioritize it.
All right. All right. You heard it. He said, just tell me you're from this group. You'll prioritize it. You heard it. It's recorded. All right, Mike. Thank you. See you
All right, have
later.
a wonderful evening. Thanks, everyone.
All right. D-Block, put me back on. Put me back on. I'm back. D took us off too quick. All right. So you heard it from the horse's mouth. On starting a startup, and I wanted to bring him on. I wanted to bring him on to showcase from a DevSecOps perspective. Oftentimes, you hear about stuff from a fintech or NFT or crypto or what have you. You may even hear about Aqua Security, but and some other companies. But I wanted to highlight from a DevSecOps perspective, where we're talking about building an actual product. Building out the team, taking it from an idea to, I guess you could say IPO, and then going from there. But I also wanted you to have the understanding of not just the sacrifices, but how to structure yourself, the time that goes into it, and so forth. So I wanted to make sure, yeah, I wasn't done yet. I wanted to make sure you have that knowledge, and also the other flip side of that is, so I've been acquired before, with a company, and usually, what you get, you may or may not, usually you do, you'll get a bump in your salary, you'll get a sign-on bonus, and then with that sign-on bonus, you'll have to stay with the company at 2 or 3 years, and then from that as well too, you'll also have, to migrate everything over. So migrating your systems over to their system, learning and pretty much integrating into that. So I wanted to share that. I know Dee wanted to drop the link, in case somebody wanted to come up if you had more questions. I don't know if she dropped it earlier. I really wasn't paying attention per se. But yeah, if you want to drop the link, that would be great. Um, must find out which coffee du jour gets through the long long nights of code. I think that comes from, more so the passion than anything. Like, when I say the passion, the push to get the actual product out is more what I'm thinking when it comes to that. And I wanted to make sure I shout out Kevin. I saw you earlier. You dropped in. Natasha, Miss Phoenix. We just kind of hop right into it. Tanya, I see you. Sasha, Tracy, Lay, I see you. Cisco Five. We appreciate your questions as well too. I mean, I hope that kind of gave y'all some ideas. And Professor Black Ops, I see you out there. Again, go check out the actual link. I think I don't know if do you have the YouTube link, but it was called Refactor, and now it's called Sophos. Again, and I showed you before where you could drop and drag and build your pipelines and get that code generated for you. As far as like the question centered around the AI and machine learning. Oh, hey Alex, sorry about that. How you doing? Um, but as far as the machine learning goes, um, I think we're at that crux right now where, when it comes down to these companies like a Hashi or a AWS or something like that, pulling that information on. Here's where I go with that. Here's where you probably see AI a lot of the times. If you're ever on Google Cloud and it says, "Hey, based upon your usage, you could you could use this machine instead of this machine. It'll save you $5, or you should use this machine because you're really overutilizing this machine." Right? That's where you see that. Those are the suggestions that where you see that at. Where I think we will see a little bit more AI on the DevSecOps side, and I'm strictly talking about Terraform. It's from Hashi, or really from Hashi, because Ansible. Well, let me take back. Even maybe even from Ansible with Red Hat, with Ansible Tower, where they have a SaaS product, and they then can take and see how customers are deploying. Say, I deployed my infrastructure and I need to stig it. Well, it can then make suggestions that you should use this stig, but now it's going to be something. It would be somebody pulling that in terms of where they got that playbook from. Maybe Red Hat maintains that playbook because they already have some playbooks already, and then maybe making suggestions on, hey, here's a baseline to start, and if you want to get to from this baseline to say this type of stig or this type of compliance, you need to add these factors in or these plays in, and here's a good place to start with how to create those plays, and maybe reference back to their actual website where you can go and pull that in and then make a template of that, or they'll offer you a template and then you fill in what you need and tweak from there. But to have it all done in one, we haven't really gotten there yet, when it comes to that. The other aspect of where it's probably more machine learning than AI. Um, Other factor that we talk about is, you see the rise of quantum computing, right? And so, what is that? What does quantum computing um, look like for DevSecOps, right? We talk about this often. Well, at least I do. Where we're building pipelines to deploy applications onto a quantum computer. So now, here's another aspect of that. What does it look like to secure the pipeline on a quantum computer and secure a quantum computer? What does that look like? And what does it look like to have secure, or as we, when I get back to this, I'm thinking about the confidential computing consortium. What does it look like to secure um, these numbers that are being crunched, right? Or this data that's being crunched. So what does that look like? And that we haven't really gotten. We're just now starting that. That confidential computing just came out about 2 or 3 years ago, if two, maybe two and a half. And we haven't really started utilizing that on a mass level. One, because of the expense, and two, because of the time. So we haven't started crunching models in a confidential way, if you want to look at it like that. I hope all that makes sense. And when I'm talking, let me give you some context of what I'm talking about. Um, Let me go here to Google Cloud, and let me pull this up. D, if you want to share my screen, confidential confid. Do you want to share my screen? All right, here we go. And then look at um GCP. All right, here is what I'm talking about here. So the confidential computing, breakthrough technology that allows you to encrypt data in use while it's being used. Simple, easy to use deployment, and doesn't compromise on performance. Collaborate with everyone. Confidential VMs in general, and confidential GKE nodes it is in preview, right? It's in preview. Like I said, we haven't really gotten there yet. Real time encryption, lift and shift confidentiality, enhance innovation. So someone who's in security, when I talk about cloud security, this is where I would this is where I would be looking at in terms of this, because it's not something that people are using just yet. But anybody that's doing like an AI machine learning model, someone crunching numbers, someone building out GKE clusters, and they want protection outside of the protection that you get from STIGs. But we're talking about real time protection, right? So that's what I'm talking about there. And these got notes for me. Let me find my mouse. Oh no. Yep. All right. In terms of what fragility do you see with Meta? Well, it's new, right? So automatically scaling, and security, like how people sharing their information, auditing, what compliance do they need to meet? Um, how is the data shared in a secure way? And how do you ensure? I mean, I know we got blockchain here, right? But when you even look at that, right? So now you need to go and do your search like this, right? Now we need to get in and start talking about blockchain security, and cloud computing. All right. So again, IBM technology, you see that comes up, but blockchain security and cloud computing, cloud security using the blockchain. This is where you're on. I don't want to say cutting edge, but you are cutting edge, because now um, is that information, right? Is that, and I would read, if I were someone that was interested in doing this, I would be reading places like at IEEE. I will also be on YouTube, right? And look at blockchain, um, cloud security, right? And the reason why, because I will be looking for conferences, and where people have given talks on this, maybe research on this, because yeah, see right here, introduction of, and this was 4 months ago, introduction to blockchain security issues and vulnerabilities, right? And then how does that tie into cloud? How does that tie into auditing? That's what I would be looking at. That would be my initial search, right? Just to get an idea, and reading white papers on it. And what I would do from there is, I went to Lucid Charts, and this is what Michael Fraser was just talking about earlier. If I want to go from, if I want to go to Lucid Charts, I go new. Um, let's see, from a template, right? And let me look up. Let me see if they got anything on blockchain right now. No, they don't. Okay, so let's look at flow charts. Really, what I want is mind maps. Because at this point, I would be doing something like this. I'll create the document. Now, at this point, I will be putting down my topics, right? So let's do this here. Let's do blockchain, um, and then from blockchain, we could say here, you could say, and let me blow it up. I know it's at 9 points, but let me just type it in. I'll blow it up. Cloud security, auditing. Um, I would be also looking at maybe someone's using this on prem. I will also be looking at um, computing. Like I should say, secure computing. All right, that's just the start, and then from here you would create. you could create more mind map or more bubbles off this mind map, right? But this is where I would start, because now you can then put in your research for this at this point. I was trying to see where the little thing was to blow this up at. Oh, where is it at? It usually is a little arrow up here where I can blow it up. I don't see it though. I can make it bigger. Let me go here. All right. So there you go. Right. So with that being said, I mean that's where I would start at, right? And then as you look at this, you can say, okay, well, you can say what industries um, does this affect, right? And then from that, you can say, okay, well, we know we got different industries from fintech to um, airlines, um, credit cards, um, housing, and so forth, right? So, and then each one of those have their own rules that they govern and go by, right? So that's how I would look at it. Here you could say you can get into I don't want to say containers, but infrastructure. Right? So I mean, this is I mean, you can see as you start with this, it's going to keep going and going and going and going. And then I just said blockchain. I didn't really say what type, right? I didn't say what type, right? Would you say TAM state to new and complex? Facebook doesn't care about security now. Oh yeah, they don't. They're going. It's a go to market strategy, but you got to remember they probably also been putting in time with this for some time, right? Some of these projects that you're just hearing about it now, they've been around for 5-10 years. They've been working on it, right? So that's just how it works. But again, the go to market strategy to announce it, um, security was probably all thrown out the window because we know about it now. Security is probably a part of their strategy, or at some point, maybe not at an increased level, but at some point, right? So that these are just things like you can look at metaverse, cyber security, right? And then start looking at why Cisco calls the metaverse the Wild Wild West. That's on November the 1st. Is metaverse ready for cyber attacks? That's Hacker Noon. And then you can get into what they're thinking about into cyber attacks, and then start adding that to your mind map. And from your mind map, what I would do next is I would create a blog from that mind map because you research and you have sources. And now, once you have that research and you have those sources, right? Here's another one right here: privacy, data use and ethics and safety guidelines. What are going to be the ethics and the data use safety guidelines? And in here, even biometric data, right? How is that going to work, right? You know, and you're accepting money or whatever the case be, whatever however you're going to pay, right? What does that look like? So these is just a few things that have not really been thought out yet. Um, and one the other thing too is, um, how do you remediate that when it happens? So we talk about protecting it, but then how do you go on the defense we talk about protecting, but how do you remediate that? And so companies being created around remediation. I've been attacked, even though I had these security things in place. How do I fix this situation? Even in cars, like we're gonna have more AI and machine learning in cars. So how do we, securely, I take my car to the shop. Someone who's a handy dandy super hacker that works at the shop decides to take my module home or whatnot. You know, now they got some private data of mine, maybe some text messages if I had to download it to my car, or maybe they got some addresses of where I've been and routes that I've been on. What does that look like? How do I protect myself as a consumer against that? How does the auto industry protect themselves against that as well too? So just little things to think about that. Even you see AI machine learning on in your cars from your routes that get calculated, and your advertising of, hey, do you want to find if you're out of gas? Hey, do you want to find this another location, or a closer location based upon the distance that you have to drive, and as far as gas left, and then where you're located at. So I hope that makes sense. D, do we have anybody backstage? And if anybody want to come up before we get out of here? I'm double checking stuff. And I appreciate y'all staying on. Okay, D says nobody backstage. All right, I want to make sure that I answered. I put that information out there. Thanks again for Michael Fraser for coming on. Thank you all for jumping in the chat, and also thank you all for asking your questions as well too. We'll see you again Wednesday night. All right.